Idaho on Your Side is proud to partner with the Idaho Statesman and Idaho Education News to present the 2014 Republican State Superintendent Debate.
And good evening to you. Welcome to the On Your Side Republican primary debate for Superintendent of Public Instruction. So glad you're joining us for this special broadcast of On Your Side tonight at 6 o'clock. Of course, with Election Day just 3 weeks away, tonight is your chance to get to know the candidates on the Republican side of the ticket. 3 of the 4 candidates are in our On Your Side studios tonight. Sherry Ibarra is the Federal Programs and Curriculum Director in the Mountain Home School District. She also served as a teacher and vice principal in the district. Randy Jensen is the principal of William Thomas Middle School in American Falls, a job he's held for 25 years. He also served as a teacher at the school for 4 years before taking the principal's position. And Andy Grover is the superintendent of the Melba School District, a job he's held since 2010. He's also worked as a teacher in the Bonneville School District and served as the Melba principal before becoming superintendent. Not with us in studio tonight is John Einen, who's a teacher in the Cottonwood School District. He did send us a statement saying that he regrets that he could not join us for the debate tonight. He had a previous school engagement that he was obligated to attend. Now, let me show you our esteemed panel for this evening who will be asking the questions. Bill Roberts, education reporter and writer for the Idaho Statesman and a partner with the On Your Side debate. Kevin Richard from Idaho Education News, a writer on that blog, also Idaho Education News, a partner with On Your Side. And of course, our very own Don Nelson, today's 6 On Your Side co-anchor with me at the 5, 6, and 10 o'clock broadcasts. Before we get through tonight, let me say a little bit about what our rules are going to be so that everybody is perfectly clear. Candidates will have 90 seconds to answer questions given to them from our panel. They'll receive a 30-second warning with a yellow light, and when time is up, they'll get the red light. We will also allow time for rebuttal and follow-up questions at my discretion. We want you to be a part of this debate tonight. What are your questions and comments for our candidates? You can pose those by posting them on our Facebook page, that's Idaho On Your Side, or on Twitter. You can use the hashtag IDOYS. Once again, everybody, thank you for being here for this first debate of the season. Let's get right to it. Our first series of questions tonight will be answered by all 3 candidates. The first question tonight coming from Kevin Richard.
Candidates, you all come into this campaign with extensive experience in the public education system, either in the classroom or in administration or both. Can you give us a specific example of how that experience would affect or inform your work as state superintendent?
Mrs. Ibarra, would you take that question first, please?
Thank you, I will. It's a pleasure to be here this evening and an honor. I want to say thank you for the invitation. I have nearly 20 years of experience in all phases of education, including classroom teacher, vice principal, principal, federal programs director, and curriculum director. With that experience, I also have extensive education with 4 degrees and nearly 3 endorsements from the state of Idaho. In my background also is the fact that my leadership responsibilities and excellence has been proven through the fact that I've taken a failing school to 4-star status, and I believe that's what Idaho's looking for in the next state superintendent. That would be our job and our focus, and that's what qualifies me in my background to serve.
Mr. Jensen, your response.
The most important thing I've done as 25 years as principal at William Thomas Middle School is build a collaborative environment. And I think that's going to be the most important skill for our next superintendent of education to have too. The ability to work with different stakeholders, different groups, in creating the best education system possible in Idaho. When I started as principal at William Thomas Middle School, I know the only way I would be really successful is if I could get teachers, parents, and community members to all come together and work as one in building a great school. And we've had a lot of great success doing that. Our school is known as one of the best middle schools, not only in Idaho, but all across the United States. 3 times we've been a national showcase school in the last 5 years. Now, that collaboration between parents, community members, teachers, and students really is the key. At the State Department, it's going to be the same thing. It's going to be the collaboration between the other stakeholder groups, Teachers Association, Administrators Association, School Boards Association, business leaders, and the legislature. whichever candidate is best able to work collaboratively with all those groups, bringing them together for the best education possible for our students, is the person that should get this job.
All right. And Mr. Grover.
You know, that's a great question for several different reasons, but first because it shows that being a teacher, I've been able to work with kids at the ground level and show them success. I still, even now that I'm running for the state superintendent position, I get emails and Facebooks from all my old students wishing me luck and telling me what they're doing with their life. So it's great to see the success they had. Then as a principal, being able to set curriculum, being able to work with teachers and train them so that our students have the best teachers in the classroom. And now as the superintendent, which oversees all aspects of the school district. And again, it's about student success. It's about helping those students. And I've shown a track record now of being able to help those students and be successful in the school system. You know, our school system, our school district set up opportunities for these kids so that they're successful not only in school but after. You know, we've set up programs where kids can earn next year up to 40 credits, dual credits, that'll help them move on to college. We've set up 8 different career certifications so that these students can find job skills. So as we move forward, it shows the ability I have to do this job.
Thank you very much. Our second question to all of our candidates again. We will be starting with Mr. Jensen this time. Our second question coming from our Idaho Statesman partner, Bill Roberts.
All of you have classroom and education experience, but shaping the state's educational policies requires an understanding of Idaho politics. You will have to convince education stakeholders, the State Board of Education, and of course the legislature and the governor, that your path is the right path. I want you to discuss specifically your political skills. How connected are you to the power structure in the state, and how you intend to maneuver the political arena to get what you say kids need?
Well, fortunately my experience is in the school working with kids and teachers and parents, but because of the success that we have had at our school in American Falls, I believe there's a lot of trust and confidence that the legislative leaders, the governor, business leaders, and the stakeholder groups, they'll have in my leadership ability. And with that leadership ability, we'll be able to pull that group together. And it's really important that there's a unified front to benefit the kids of Idaho. Now, the last 3 months, I've tried to engage myself into becoming somewhat of a politician and work with legislators, meet them, listen to them, listen to political leaders. And I think that what I've found all across the state is that really people want our education system to be the best possible. They want to do what's best for kids. They just need someone with a strong vision, someone who can work with all of them in a supportive way to help do what's best for our kids in Idaho. And I believe that because of my leadership ability, because of my history, my track record of success, the people in Idaho and those groups will have trust and confidence in my leadership abilities.
Mr. Grover.
You know, the importance of being able to work collaboratively or as a team is what's going to make this thing go forward. And having those connections at the legislative level is one more area where I have experience in. I've chaired different committees for the State Department. I've been down and talked before the legislators and currently work with most of the leadership in the legislature. So I have that experience going in. And it's just like when you work with a district team and working on the different levels and getting all parties involved, whether it's teachers, parents, students, and making important decisions. It works the same when you get to the State Department level. Now you have the State Board and you have the legislators, and you have to be able to work collaboratively and in a team effort to move education forward. We have the 20 recommendations from the Governor's Educational Task Force that people have already bought into. Teachers, the legislature, parents, and so moving that forward is going to be the direction that I will take this department.
And Mrs. Ibarra.
This is one of my favorite questions. I don't think that Idaho is looking for a political leader. They are looking for an educational leader, and I am very strong in that sense. That does not mean that politics are not involved in education. As a person who has worked their way through this system from a classroom teacher all the way up to a curriculum director, which happens to be third in command of a district that is the size, has 7 schools and nearly 4,000 students, they're looking for an educational leader. I've navigated through the politics by meeting with senators such as Senator Keogh and Senator Getty. I've spent hours at the Capitol watching sessions. I've also met with the Attorney General, but I have more than 257,000 little reasons, grades K through 12, to maintain my focus on education. I will navigate the politics, but I will focus on education.
Thank you all. I'm sure that topic will come up again. On Your Side's Don Nelson is following our questions and comments tonight as they come in from you through our Facebook page, Idaho On Your Side, and also on Twitter using the hashtag IDOYS for On Your Side. Don, your first question for the evening.
Thanks, Michelle. Our first question from Twitter. A book in the Meridian School District is causing quite a bit of controversy after some parents called the book inappropriate for students. Now, S.L. Fisher wants to know, what is your opinion of the Diary of a Part-Time Indian controversy, and how would you advise districts to handle similar incidents?
Mr. Grover, would you please start?
I will, and it's a great question, and it leads back to the local control of those school districts. You know, the state sets a standard, and in our case right now, it's the Common Core standards that we have. And then districts get to choose how to meet those standards. They choose the curriculum, they choose all the stuff that meets those standards, and part of that is choosing the literature and the reading material that's used in the school districts. And so when you get controversial books that sometimes come up, that's a school choice that chose that book. That is not something that was directed by the state or the feds or anyone else. And so local control still has the power to remove that book, and there's a process you go through. And it comes down to the culture of your individual communities. Are they conservative? Are they liberal? You know, it's very important that people understand that it's still the local control that gets to pull those kind of books out of the reading material. So, you know, we have a group that oversees our books in the Melba School District, and we make sure that it meets our local beliefs.
Let me ask you this as a follow-up. Is that book in your reading list in the Melba School District?
It is in the library.
But not in the classroom?
But not in the classroom.
All right, Mrs. Ibarra, would you please answer the question?
That is a great question. I'd like to thank the viewers for asking. That means they are being an active member of their community, as we want parents to be focused on education. There are policies in place, and that is, I concur with my opponent, that is left up to each local school district with policies that are in place. If you have a concern with a book, that you can take that to your local board through the directive of their policy. So that is up to individual school districts. And as far as my opinion on that book goes, that's an example of the top-down approach that I think needs to be left back in the hands of each individual school district.
Is the book in your school district?
Yes, I believe it is. Yes, in the library, you can select it, but it's not something that is required.
Mr. Jensen.
I agree with both of my opponents here that this really is a local decision, left at the local level. I think the role the State Department or State Superintendent can play, though, is working closely with school districts, helping them make sure they have policies for situations like this. Some of our larger districts may have great policies, but a lot of our smaller districts may need help in building those policies. One of the roles I would have is to work with the State School Boards Association, State Administrators Association, in helping strengthen local school boards, helping strengthen local administrators so they can be the best they can be, and help them develop policies that best serve their local communities. So when they get into a situation like this, they're following policy, allowing for voice, allowing for parent input, but they have a policy that they can follow and go with.
And again, the question for you. Is the Part-Time Indian book in your classrooms?
It's not in my classroom, and I'm not even sure if it's in my library, sorry.
Let me do one more quick follow-up on this. When it comes to controversial books, and particularly we're talking about writing here, have any of the three of you ever had to ban a book in your tenure?
Yes, I have.
And what book was that, Mrs.
I cannot remember the name of the book, but we have had a book at the junior high level when I was the vice principal, and also had a book actually at the 4th grade level that we had to review as a committee and remove from the library, yes.
And what was the general consensus on why to remove that book?
The general consensus was it was not appropriate for that age level, and it was a group of parents that followed the policy, and we listened to them, and it was not correct for our culture and our school. So again, that's a great example of local control and the authority that each school district has to make those decisions.
Gentlemen, either in your cases?
Do you know what, we didn't ban a book, but we did have a book that we did go through this process, and what it did for us is we brought in parents and school board members and teachers that reviewed the book and actually helped us build new policy on how we would go through to remove a book. And so now we have a lot better policy in our district that we created at the local level.
We've not had that situation.
Maybe not yet.
Yet.
All right, we are going to give our candidates and our panel a quick break. We're going to take a quick break with you. Coming up next, we're going to hear the candidates' views on some of the hottest topics in education right now, including, as you first heard, the governor's task force. How do they really feel about those 20 recommendations? And also on the buzzwords, Common Core. Stick with us. You are watching the Republican candidates for state superintendent right here on your side.
Follow-up questions. There will not be any lights up, so there's no time limit. It's kind of up to Michelle, so don't let that throw you out when you have any questions.
Thank you, John.
Yeah.
Bill, we'll be starting with you.
Okay. 1 minute.
Grendel. And welcome back to the On Your Side Republican State Superintendent debate for public instruction. This next set of questions will be going to all three of our candidates. They're going to hit on some of the most controversial topics in education in the state of Idaho. Once again, we want to remind you of the rules. Each candidate will be allowed 90 seconds to answer the question, and we will set aside some time for rebuttal or follow-up questions from our esteemed panel if necessary. So our first question from the panel tonight, once again from the Idaho Statesman, Bill Roberts.
Governor Otter's Task Force for Improving Education presented 20 recommendations for fixing schools. Some of them include more money for schools, a career ladder for teachers, more autonomy for schools. I would like you to choose one of the 20 and talk to me about its strengths and its weaknesses.
Mr. Jensen, we're going to allow you to answer first on that question.
Well, I'd probably like to tackle the most important one, and that could be the career ladder and teacher licensure. It's very important because in Idaho we have had a hard time recruiting and keeping the very best teachers here, primarily because our teachers are not paid what they should be paid. And so development of this career ladder and the teacher licensure system is critical to the future success of our schools. And so it's so important that all stakeholder groups now continue to work together in developing that career ladder, but most importantly, we need to hold our legislators and our governor responsible for making sure they fully fund those Governor Task Force recommendations. Those recommendations were put together in a cooperative effort, and it's so critical now that we provide the funding to make those happen, especially when it comes to the tiered licensure and the career ladder. It's going to cost a lot of money, but for us to retain and recruit the best teachers for our students, it is really important. Now, the weaknesses is that a lot of details in those. And I sat in a meeting today and watched the committee hash out some of those details, and it's going to be a tough job to make those come together in an effective way where everyone can feel comfortable to support them and provide the funding for them. But I believe here in Idaho, working together, we can make it happen.
Mr. Greber.
Well, I do want to go back to Bill's original comment and say, you know, the 20 recommendations aren't there to fix education. Our education systems are not broken. You know, we are doing some amazing things in the school districts, and our kids haven't ever had it this well or done this well in education. So I don't think the 20 recommendations are there to fix education. I think they've been put into place to help move education forward as we go into the future. So I just want to clarify that part. And I would say the biggest thing on those 20 recommendations that I think is so important is the professional development. You know, our kids are only as good as our teachers that are in the classroom. We have to make sure that teachers have the skills, the knowledge, and the pedagogy to teach their classrooms and to teach their kids and, again, help those students be successful in those classrooms. It's so important that we take the time with our teachers and give them the tools that they need and that are necessary for our teachers to be able to be successful. I think that's the key. I think that's one of the biggest parts of the 20 recommendations, and putting our time into our teachers. We do that every other Friday in Melba. We work on training our teachers, and it's made a huge impact on the academics of our students.
Mrs. Ibarra.
I concur with my opponents in that the first thing you need to do is prioritize those items, and two of the top items would be the career ladders and as well as the professional development. Those are two items that get down to the classroom that affect what we educators call systemic change and get to the most important person in this whole process, and that's that child. Attracting and retaining high quality teachers and giving them the professional development that they need affects that systemic change. I would also like to say, in furthering that conversation, that those are just initiatives. And in order for those to become reality, we need to include our teachers in that and get that down to the level that those folks can understand and get out into the classroom. They are just initiatives until we involve our teachers in that process.
Thank you all. Kevin, your question, please.
Well, let's talk about one of the task force recommendations that none of you mentioned just now, and that's Common Core. A lot of controversy, a lot of consternation about Common Core, but the three of you are basically in the same place as the task force. You support the standards. You've seen them in the field now for a year. You've seen the standards and the assessments in the field for a year. Have you seen anything that has given you pause where you feel like maybe the critics and the skeptics about Common Core have legitimate concerns?
Mr. Greber?
Do you know what the Common Core set of standards, that's what they are. They're a set of standards that were created several years ago or adopted several years ago by the state legislature, and it's in language, arts, and math. And then each local district gets to choose how they meet those standards. We've been working on the math standards now for over 3 years in our district, and the language arts standards for about 2 years. And so as we've worked on implementing these, part of the biggest issue is working with parents to make sure they understand what the standards mean. But we have to set high standards. Our students deserve the opportunities to be able to reach a high standard and then be able to compete not only at a state level, but between states and even on a global level. So having high standards is the exact direction we need to go, and those Common Core standards, that's what they are. They're a set of standards in language, arts, and math. And the local districts still get to choose how to meet those standards.
Mrs. Ibarra?
You know, as a future doctor by this summer, I have done a lot of research, and that makes me an expert in the field and how students learn. This is good for kids. It is just a set of skills. However, I will tell you that it needs some work. We have just laid the foundation, and we need to continue to build the schoolhouse. And some of the issues that I have noticed in working with that includes the set of skills and raising the standards, but there's nothing in there that speaks to research-based ideas and ways to help students get there if they're not coming into the classroom with that skill already. And so we need to get back to that. Those are some items that I will plan on working with as a future state superintendent of public instruction, is focusing on those items that are weak with a panel of people that are closest to our children, and understanding that there's no research-based method in there for addressing how we acquire those skills.
Thank you very much.
Yes.
Mr. Jensen.
Well, it's easy to talk about a lot of the positive things that come with the Common Core standards, but to stick to the question today and talking about maybe something I have concern about, I think the big concern with the Common Core standard is making sure that we take time to do it right. We have trained teachers some. We need to have continual professional development. What Mr. Grover talked about earlier in the importance of professional development. We need to make sure we take our time to help train our teachers the best we can, to help them implement those standards the best that they can, and develop ways to help our students the most. The other thing is, just as we magically raise standards doesn't mean that kids are going to immediately meet those standards. It's going to take time for those standards to work their way up through the system and for kids to meet those higher standards. And so it's going to take time. It's really important that we don't hold students, teachers, or schools accountable on a single test until we make sure that the standards have been given time to be implemented, and especially with the testing of the SBAC test, to make sure that that test is reliable, that it's developmentally responsible, and that it provides really accurate information to teachers. And once again, the key here is making sure we take time to implement them correctly. And I really think that's going to take 3, 4, 5, 6 years. It's not something that can just be done in another year or 2 years.
Panel, do you have a follow-up question when it comes to what Mr. Jensen was just talking about when it comes to the SBAC test? Is there anything you want to know from our candidates about how they feel about the test? Bill?
I do. There is a lot of discussion about the SBAC Smarter Balanced Assessment being used as a graduation test, which would play a significant role in determining whether or not students get a diploma. I'd like to know what you all think about that.
I would like to answer that question. I've done a lot of research in that area, and I feel that that is contributing to our current behavior of testing all kids grades 3 through 11 when the federal mandate only requires us to test grades 3 through 8 and once at the high school level. If indeed the end of the product is preparing kids for college and career readiness, as your future state superintendent of public instruction, I would question why we are continuing to test all children grades 3 through 11. I would have a plan in place that once you have reached that one grade level at the high school that you're required through the federal mandate, and you have proven that you have acquired those standards, you should finish there. Again, our current practice is taking us down a path towards what are we going to do with the results from the SBAC test. And if it is created to police the standards, that is not in the best interest of our students. I will be the type of leader that taps the brakes in that area and makes sure we are using that information as it is intended to be used.
Gentlemen, do you have a thought on that?
I do. I think that using one test to judge a student isn't fair. I really think accountability should be whole picture. And I think it's important when we look at our students that we look at the total success they've had in school and not base their graduation or success solely on one test. I don't think that's fair for students. I don't believe it's fair for teachers, nor is it fair for a school. Accountability needs to be whole picture. And unfortunately, when we want it, and I believe in higher standards, and I want all of our students to reach higher standards, but we can't force all students through the same hole. There are square pegs, round pegs, triangular pegs. We need to make sure our education is personalized, and we develop the personal strengths that each student has in helping them succeed so that they can move seamlessly from high school to that next step in their life, whether that's to a job, technical school, or university.
So are you for or against the SBAC?
I like the SBAC test if it provides accurate information for teachers to help students. If its sole purpose is to hold student, teacher, or schools accountable, and it's the only way you're holding them accountable, I'm not in favor of it. I do not like high-stakes testing. But the SBAC test can be good if it's done right.
How's the SBAC testing going in your district, Mr. Grover?
You know what? It has gone very well. We finished actually today with both our elementary and our junior, senior high school. We had, you know, a few issues in the elementary, and actually it went surprisingly well in our junior, senior high. You know, the beauty of this test is that this is a pilot. This is the time that we see what works and what doesn't work. You know, and I think it's really important that we understand that 50% almost of our budget, of Idaho's budget, goes to education, right? And so where we've set a set of standards, we need to be able to assess to see that we're meeting those standards. And so having some kind of assessment in place that meets those standards is important. And as I've worked with superintendents around the state, I'm the Region 3 superintendent president, and I talk to superintendents all over, they're not against having assessments. You know, there's questions on how this assessment's going to work out, and that's why we're doing a pilot, to see what exactly works and what doesn't work. We've been pleasantly surprised in our junior high and high school on how well it's went, and we tested every student. You know, and now we won't get to see that data, but the State Department will, and then they can help make decisions on how that moves forward, and then we can use that data to help us. I think the other thing that's really important to remember here is that there are alternative routes. We have it now. So if a kid does not pass the ISAT or did not pass the ISAT over the past few years, there's different tracks to take those students down that they can meet those same requirements and still graduate, and that has not changed. There are still alternate routes for those students that don't do well on the ISAT, or excuse me, on the SBAC, that will be able to take those students down that route, and they can show proficiency in another way, so that it isn't all based on one test.
All right, I'm going to wrap you there because we have more questions coming in from our public as they've been watching our On Your Side Republican State Superintendent debate. Don, you have a question coming in right now. What's that one?
Yeah, we have actually a couple. Hopefully we can get them both in here. Some great questions off of Twitter. This one comes from the High Five Initiative, Fighting Childhood Obesity, who we should say partners with On Your Side. They ask, what are the candidates' stances on fitness, nutrition, and early childhood education and child care?
Mrs. Ibarra, it's your turn to go first.
Thank you. That's a wonderful question. My background in the research is that early childhood education research proves that for every dollar that we spend, we have an $8 return on our investment. Also, that those students are better prepared for school, and they have better language skills, and they need less remediation later on. And however, before we address that, I think that we need to focus on our current system, grades K through 12, and eventually we are going to need to address that. There is no way around it. If it better prepares students for the future, we need to be doing it. The second question relates to child obesity and nutrition. I would like to tell everybody out there that I was one of the first receivers of the Fuel Up to Play 60 grant for my school. And so there is a lot of research also developmentally in how students learn and how that relates to their education and their achievement. It is very important that we have those programs in place because exercise is directly related to pathways in the brain that open up for learning and achievement. So I am a proponent of those items, yes. Thank you.
Mr. Jensen.
I would like to start with talking about obesity and with fitness and say at our school we require students to have a physical education class, or we call it Fitness for Life, all 3 years. Our goal there is to hopefully train our students to have a fitness plan that they've done for 3 years, and so after 3 years it really becomes a part of their life and they'll continue it for the rest of their life. One other important change we made at our school is that we looked at the data and saw that only 18% of our students ate breakfast before school, and we asked why. Why? Because 1, they didn't have time in the morning, 2, maybe they ate breakfast at home, or 3, they didn't like eating that early. So we moved our breakfast to mid-morning at 9:30. Now we have over 80% of our students eat breakfast at school, and what we found with that is that in the classroom before lunch, used to be that our most discipline problems happened during that hour. Those discipline problems didn't go down, they went away. The other thing that happened there is that our achievement went up. Typically it dipped right prior to lunch hour. Now our achievement goes up during that hour. So I think there's some things we can do at school that really make a big difference for students. Now, early childhood education, I believe we have to involve parents. I would love to start a Read 20 program where we promote all across the state of Idaho a program that parents spend 20 minutes a day reading with their kids from birth to kindergarten. Because if we can get parents engaged prior to the start of school, instead of having 50% of our kids behind when they start kindergarten, we can have all of our kids at level when they start kindergarten.
Thank you very much. Mr. Grover.
Thank you. That is a great question, all three of them actually. And I'll start with the obesity as well. You know, as the federal government has changed the rules on what we can serve at schools, what we found is a lot of our kids now take their money that they used to spend on school lunch and they go down to the local store and buy whatever it is that they want to buy. So I'm not necessarily sure that not having the local control of what we feed our kids in school has really helped us much. You know, so we need to get back to having parents help raise their kids on what they should eat and what they shouldn't eat. You know, just making a federal regulation on then how we have to feed those has not helped the situation. You know, and we all have PE programs. We support those PE programs, and all our kids in my school district go through those PE programs for the same reason. We hope that we do build a healthy lifestyle in our students. You know, early childhood, the research shows that early childhood development is huge, and we need to continue to promote that. We have an every other day, full day kindergarten, and we're seeing the benefits of our students being able to learn to read, and we have our parents working with our students to learn how to read, and it really is a collaboration between parents and the school.
Such big topics that you'd never expect coming out of schools when we start talking about nutrition and obesity and reading by the time you're 2, even at birth. We appreciate all of your comments. We have one more comment, a question coming in. Don, where's this one coming from? Yeah, let's ask this one as well.
I like this one. This is from Bradley on Twitter. What on earth are we going to do to raise salaries for teachers and keep them in Idaho?
Mr. Grover, why don't you take that one?
That's a great question, and one we've dealt with, I think, since education's been around. And we do have an option. We are working on the teacher licensure and the teacher pay ladder that, if put into place, it's an $85 million a year price tag. But what that does is it creates a $40,000, $50,000, $60,000 pay scale for those teachers. And teachers can then earn a respectable wage that represents the profession that they have. And it will help us keep teachers. We still won't be able to compete with maybe all the oil states and those around us, but we'll certainly make it a livable wage and lifestyle here in Idaho. So I think it's important as we move forward, we work with the legislators and teachers, you know, in the different groups, and make sure that we can implement and fully fund that teacher's ladder to get those dollars up to a livable wage.
Mrs. Ibarra.
We are on our way to attracting and retaining high-quality teachers, and I believe that is one of the initiatives that we need to continue to work on. That is one of those items, again, that addresses the whole child. It's part of my platform as a future superintendent of public instruction and affects that systemic change. And what I mean by systemic change is how we get that change down to the classroom. Every child deserves a highly qualified, highly trained professional in their classroom. And so we are on the right track, and we have the capability, and we need to just keep thinking about the future and the fact that if we cannot afford it now, we will pay for it later.
Mr. Jensen.
You know, I have an excellent teacher at my school right now. His name is Jake Foster. He teaches 6th grade science. The kids love him. He's an excellent teacher. He integrates technology. He works with other disciplines and other teachers. He's a great team member. But he's quitting this year after 5 years of teaching because he has stayed at the same salary now for 5 years at $31,000. He's going back to college to further not his education profession. He's going back to become a physician's assistant because he hasn't even been able to pay off his student loans. It's critical that we raise our teacher salaries and we pay them a fair wage. I think I discussed that earlier, and I think we're on the path of doing that, but it's crucial that we make sure we guarantee the funding necessary to implement the pay changes for Idaho teachers.
If I gave you a magic wand, how much would you give them tonight?
Well, I like the salary schedule they're proposing now at $40,000 to $60,000. Unfortunately, it's going to take us 5 or 6 years to get there, but I would love to be able to tell a beginning teacher that you can make $40,000, and in 9 or 10 years of really solid service, you can be up to $60,000 as you become a master teacher.
The hot topics just keep coming. Coming up next, our panelists will be asking specific questions direct to our candidates. It's something you're not going to want to miss. You're watching the On Your Side Republican State Superintendent Debate. Yep. Okay.
90.
And welcome back to the On Your Side Republican debate for the primary for Superintendent of Public Instruction. In this next segment, each of our panelists has a direct question for a specific candidate that they have been thinking about. Bill Roberts from the Idaho Statesman, I'd like to start with you. You have a question for Mr. Grover tonight.
I do. As superintendent, you will serve on the State Board of Education. For more than 2 decades, the State Board of Education has annually voted to raise college tuitions to the points that some members now believe they are pricing students out of the market. How will you approach increased tuition requests from the universities?
Well, that's a great question, Bill, and we still have some of the lowest tuition rates around the United States. Our universities are still very much affordable to most people in Idaho. I think it's important to talk about working on that board. You're one voice on that board and one vote on that board. And where I have the experience working with the local school board now, from being the superintendent and creating policy and curriculum, I have that experience of working with that school board. And so being able to take that experience and now take it to a state level and work with the state on figuring out what is an actual cost of tuition. You know, with dollars going down over the last few years, the universities have had to also make cuts, and they've added new programs as well. And so just to keep their doors open, they've had to raise their tuition rates to pay their bills. So the question will come down to what is an affordable rate, and it's going to be, again, bringing in the stakeholders, bringing in not only the state board, but bringing in those higher ed universities and those folks on how they can raise those dollars and make sure that they can keep their doors open and affordable for our Idaho students.
My co-anchor, Don Nelson from On Your Side, a question for Mr. Jensen tonight.
I have got a question for you, Mr. Jensen. I have a son and a daughter, both in middle school. I don't believe they're dating yet. At least they haven't told me. I haven't seen any boyfriends or girlfriends running around. But in a recent article in the Idaho Statesman, you referred to the distractions that serious relationships can have on both boys and girls heading to the high school level. I see you're smiling already. You said, quote, "You start dating for 2 or 3 months, and that takes over your life. I don't want them to have complicated lives." So the question is, what role does the state's top educator have when it comes to the social environment of the student outside the classroom?
Well, that's a great question. You know, the great thing about being a principal for 25 years at the same school is that the majority of my students now, I had their parents as students at middle school. And so it really helps me look at the big picture. and realize that if a student misses a test or does something wrong, it's okay. They'll grow up. Some of my very best parents now, when they come to school, they remember the day that maybe I suspended them or got mad at them. I don't remember that. But I think what's real important there is that the superintendent has to make sure that they keep that big picture vision. That most importantly, what I love is when one of my ex-students who now is 34 or 35 comes back to me and I talk to them and they're happy. They have strong relationships in their life. They have a great family. They have a career that they really enjoy. And when they tell me that, that's what brings my greatest joy. And that's how really I think we need to judge our schools the very most, is what their student, the happiness of their student 15 or 20 years after they graduate. And so I think my role as state superintendent is going to be to make sure that we keep a focus on the big picture, on the whole child, and not just focus on small things, but really keep a vision of the big picture.
Thank you very much. Our partners at Idaho Education News, Kevin Richard, you have a question for Mrs. Ibarra.
Yes, I do, and I kind of wanted to go back to the early education pre-K discussion we had earlier. The Republican Party platform is pretty adamant about pre-K and basically rules out publicly funded pre-K. You want to look at the research. You seem to feel like the research is fairly supportive of the idea of pre-K. How do you navigate the politics of this when so many members of your party are so steadfastly opposed and have drawn a line in the sand on this issue? How do you navigate the politics?
That is a great question, and I think part of the answer lies in the question that you asked me. I am not weak in my ability to lead others. I've already proven that through my leading a failing school to 4-star status, and I think it lies in navigating that correctly, leading others to see the research that every dollar that you invest in that is an $8 return. And kindergarten used to be the place where kids prepared for their academic future, and now they are part of the academics. So those are some of the items as a future state superintendent of public instruction and a leader who is responsible. I will advocate for those students and what's best and in their best interest.
A lot of hard-hitting questions from our panelists. Thank you very much for those. Really quickly, I just want kind of a single answer here, a single thought. If you were going to walk into that office on your first day after being elected and you put your iPad out in front of you and you were about to make your to-do list, what would be the topic at the top of the to-do list?
That is a wonderful question, and at the top of my to-do list is part of having a vision for the future. And I would like to address our approach. And our approach is in addressing the whole child and not having a business-like approach to education. Folks, schools are not businesses, teachers are not assembly lines, and students are not manufactured as outputs. And so our approach in addressing the whole child is actually the difference between efficacy and efficiency. Efficacy is related to the business approach, and that means focusing on the output. Efficiency is the means to the end and how a student learns developmentally and what's appropriate and stretching the dollar. And so I would focus on that approach and addressing those top 3 priorities: 21st century abilities, safety and support, not over-testing our students, and making sure that we are not taking the efficacy model and business-like approach, but the efficiency model to addressing the whole child.
Mrs. Ibarra, that's a pretty long to-do list, including some vocabulary lessons on top. Mr. Grover, let's skip over to you. What would be at the top of the to-do list?
It's student opportunities. How do we make sure that everything that we're doing in education, from the dollars spent to the teachers in the classroom, how are we making sure that our students are being prepared for after graduation? You know, and that's my to-do list. Everything that we need to do in education has to answer that question. How is it benefiting our students? You know, I have 3 daughters, and my expectation for them is that they will be successful in life, and that's going to start with a good education. And they're getting a good education now, and we just want to make sure that it's even better for my kids and for all the parents out there that have kids in school.
Mr. Jensen.
Probably similar to-do lists as both Sherry and Andy, but I think one of the most important things I have to do that very first day is really start to assemble an all-star team to lead the state. The success I've had has always been by surrounding myself with the best possible people, and the state superintendent needs to do the same thing. He needs to surround him or herself with the best possible people so that they can serve the students best, so that we can be efficient. And by putting a team together of the strongest educators, the strongest people we can to lead our schools and to lead our State Department, that's critical. So first off is developing that all-star team of staff.
Long to-do lists. We'll make sure you have all the technology you need in order to get there. We have had a wonderful debate so far. Coming up next, we are going to wrap things up, allow each of our candidates to have a couple of minutes of closing time so you can hear directly from them. We are back next with the On Your Side Republican primary state superintendent debate. And then Sherry, yes.
Yeah, it was a good discussion. 90.
I'm going to have 3 kids in college next year. I want to dance that college tuition.
2 minutes for each candidate, and you will be giving them lights just like we have, correct? Candidates, really fast, sorry, Dawn. Same thing, we'll be giving you 2 minutes. Same light situation, we'll give you the 30-second, but just realize it'll feel a little bit longer because you have 2 minutes. So don't let that throw you because we've been giving you 90 seconds. It's math. Okay. We are just finishing up our On Your Side State Schools Superintendent Republican primary debate. We wanted to give each of you the chance to give a closing statement. The candidates will each have 2 minutes by random drawing. Mr. Randy Jensen, you get to go first tonight.
I first want to thank you for the opportunity of being here for the debate tonight. Thank all of you for your questions, and I appreciate everyone that's taking time to watch the debate tonight. I know on the first great night of the spring, it would sure be nice to be at a ball game or going on a bike ride, and that's probably where I would have been tonight, but I appreciate everyone that's taking time to watch the debate. In 2005, I was awarded the honor of being the National Principal of the Year, and I give a lot of that credit to my entire staff at my school and my whole community, but the importance of that honor is that Idaho needs a proven successful educational leader. That award was given to me because of the collaborative effort. But I was featured in a magazine when I received that award, and the headline in that magazine was titled, "Putting Students First." Now, that was 2005, so sometimes I get upset that other people stole my Students First headline. But what I can tell you is that in my 29 years of education, the success I've had is because I've always put students first. The decisions that I've made as a teacher and as a principal are always based on what is best for my students and what is going to help my students the most and help them become the people that we want them to become. And so I promise to the people of Idaho on May 20th, when you go out and vote, and hopefully you vote for Randy Jensen, that you know and you can have the trust and confidence that the decisions that I make will be based on putting students first and doing what's best for Idaho students. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Jensen. Mr. Andy Grover.
Well, I'd like to thank Channel 6 and On Your Side for putting this on. It's a great opportunity for us to be able to get out and meet more people. One of the hardest things in our race is that we're not well known. And I think it comes down to the experiences that we each have. You know, I have the practical experience of not only being a parent and a teacher and have been a principal, I'm a current superintendent, and I oversee the entire district and the operation of those districts. And I can not only say this is what I would like to do, I can say look at what we've done. Our students have increased academically over 25% in both language arts and in math. And for the first time in 8 years, we didn't run a supplemental levy. You know, there's 3 main areas that I will continue to push. And as you heard me say all night, the first part's all about students and the opportunities that students get. We have 2 college pathways, and we have over 8 certifications that are career technical certifications that our students can earn right now, so that when they graduate, they have a skill, and they can either go on to college, they can go to the military, or they can go right into the workforce and earn a livable wage. And it really comes down to those students. The second thing is teachers. Making sure that our teachers are prepared and they're ready, and giving them the opportunity to be successful in the classroom and teach our students. And the final thing is the fiscal responsibility. Having run a district through some of the worst times in educational history in Idaho and coming out on top, it's important to understand how those dollars are spent. $1.37 million is the budget for next year, and understanding all the different parts of a school district and how it needs to run is the leadership that needs to run this state. Again, my name's Andy Grover, and I'm running for state superintendent, and would appreciate your vote May 20th.
Thank you, Mr. Grover. Mrs. Sherry Ibarra.
Thank you for having me here this evening. It's a great honor to be here. And I would just like everyone to know that I am a practitioner with nearly 20 years of experience in the field, feet on the ground, in the trenches, not removed from the education of our students. With that nearly 20 years and my extensive background in education, with a Bachelor of Arts in Elementary Education, a Master's in Educational Leadership, an Educational Specialist degree with an emphasis and certificate in the superintendency, and a doctorate this summer in Curriculum and Instruction. You add that with my 20 years of experience and you have a formula for success. And I believe that's what Idaho's looking for. With that extensive education and that extensive experience and my current position as a federal programs director, that makes me a chief financial officer of 7 schools and nearly 4,000 students. I have the expertise and the knowledge in what Idaho is looking for in our next state superintendent of public instruction, with a vision to move us forward that addresses the whole child and understands how to make schools flourish. My name is Sherry Ibarra, and I would be honored to represent Idaho as the next state superintendent of public instruction.
Thank you, all 3 candidates. Excellent job tonight. And it's going to be a hard choice as people go to the polls on May 20th. To our panel, really quickly, tell me a little bit. Idaho Statesman's education writer Bill Roberts, what's coming up in the Statesman's tomorrow?
Well, I'm not sure yet. I get the joy of going home and thinking about all of this, and I will probably be writing a blog with some thoughts and ideas early in the morning.
Excellent. We like keeping you up late. We can work my hours. And our partner with Idaho Education News, Kevin Richard. What can we expect on idahoednews.org?
Well, we should have a follow-up story on this hopefully fairly soon. Clark Corbin is watching the debate. He's going to be writing about it this evening. I think, like Bill, I'm going to take a step back tomorrow morning and try to connect the dots and do a follow-up blog and take some of what we heard tonight and try to distill it a little bit. We heard a lot.
We did hear a lot of different topics. Don Nelson, not only coming up tonight at 10 on your side, but on Fox 9 on your side.
Yes, at both 9 o'clock and 10 o'clock, a recap. I believe reporter Jake Melder will be putting together a story on the debate tonight, showing some of the highlights, like we say in the TV business. So again, that comes tonight. It comes your way tonight, 9 o'clock on Fox 9, and then at 10 o'clock on Today's 6.
And I have to say, to everybody out there who participated in our debate, let's face it, you are the voters. We wanted to bring you the appropriate information, and we thank you for the questions that you posed, not only at Idaho on Your Side on Facebook, but on our hashtag on Twitter, IDOYS. For all of us here on your side, thank you for joining us.